Hey there, horror movie tea sippers.
The following podcast will contain spoilers for the movie we are about to review. If you have not seen the movie and do not wish to have anything ruined prematurely, then please do not continue to listen until after you have seen the movie.
And welcome to the Horror Movie Tea podcast. And this week, we are covering Cabin Fever from 2002. This movie was requested by Brady, so thank you, Brady, for the request.
We appreciate you, Brady.
Yay! So the quick rundown of this movie is it's your typical horror flick where these teenagers go to a cabin alone for the week, and this diseased guy goes up to them to try and get help. Instead of getting the guy help, they just freak out and light him on fire. And the guy ends up dying in their water source, and they drink the water. They get infected as well. Lots of death ensues. And more death ensues, which infects more water, and then the whole town gets infected, and that's the movie.
Well, it seems to be kind of airborne, too. Like, it transmits a few different ways in this movie. But there's lots of gross death, so...
Yeah, lots of gross death.
Spreads a lot.
And a few words that we would not find appropriate to use today. There's two in particular that I can think of that I will not mention. But anyone watching that movie with the lens of present day will definitely be a little bit jarred. So if you haven't watched the movie, just be prepared for that.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I forgot that some of that was in there, honestly.
I know. I was like, damn, I feel uncomfortable. Like, especially using the one word to describe, like, lame or stupid. As like, yeah, nowadays that would not be acceptable. But I do remember as a teenager, people using that word.
It was used pretty often back then.
Yeah.
So it does date the movie, as well as their flip cell phones. The one cell phone we saw in the entire movie, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, because of course they only one person has a cell phone. It's
and the skater, quote unquote, dude that at one point goes faced.
Oh yeah.
Completely dated the movie right there.
Yep, it did. It did. And his goatee.
Soul patch, yes.
And the hairstyles, like the blonde girl had like the two buns. I'm like, yeah, that I haven't seen that since the 90s.
Yeah.
But before
it's a pretty dated movie, for sure.
But before we go too deep in it, what tea are you drinking today?
I am back to my ginger peach turmeric tea, because I got some sore muscles from a workout and I just need to relax.
I hear ya. I am drinking the Public Goods Organic Chamomile and Spearmint tea.
Ooh, that sounds good.
I needed some soothing tea, and this is definitely a very soothing tea. It's a very comforting tea.
So, when you want, like, a really, really soothing tea, which one do you tend to go for? Because I know I usually go for, like, I have a chamomile lavender one that I usually go for.
Yeah, I tend to go for chamomile over lavender. Lavender I more gravitate towards when I'm trying to get tired or if I want to sleep deeply.
That's fair.
Chamomile I use for stress.
I use it for both. So when I really want to get it, I just use the combo tea and knock it out with both of them. Stress be gone.
That's what they need. They need to come out with a tea and name it Stress Be Gone.
That would be amazing. I would probably drink the hell out of that.
Yep, I probably would too.
Especially with this quarantine. I'm so done.
So, as far as entertainment, I guess I'll start us off, and then we'll dig deeper in the things we want to discuss after our ratings. So this movie's kind of a tough one.
It is.
I'm kind of debating between a 4 or a 5. I'm going to say a 5.
I'd say about a 5.5, maybe a 6. Honestly. You know me. I love my gory movies.
You do.
I do. The whole movie, you guys should have heard us. The whole movie, whenever there was like a bloody scene or something, her arm was coming up to try to cover her.
I know. And then you kept on being like, put your arm down.
Over here, put the arm down.
And then it's like, yeah, I'm trying to cover my eyes with my arm, and I'm also like screaming. Like screaming bloody murder because like the last time I saw this movie, I was a teenager, so I barely remembered the movie. There's only
I remembered it a bit more.
1 or 2 scenes that came to mind. Like I remember blonde guy I thought was a douche, and then
he's kind of grody.
And then the girl shaving herself in the tub and her skin flakes off. Those were
just got you.
Yeah, those were the 2 moments in my head as a teenager that carried up through adulthood. So, thanks, brain.
Yeah. I still kind of enjoyed it. It's been a while for me too since I've seen this movie, but I did remember a lot more of it than I think you did. But it is kind of hard to know what to think of this movie, honestly. It's a good movie. I always viewed it as they were trying to take it seriously and all. We did look it up. It is supposed to be more of a satire kind of film, kind of like Scream, where it's supposed to be a horror comedy, kind of. So it's not really taking it completely seriously. And that, to me, does make it better.
Yes, for sure.
Because I was in, like, physical pain during some of these scenes with just the stupidity and incompetence.
Yeah.
So knowing that they were trying to make it not so serious and that they meant to do this ironically and all, that makes it better. For
sure. But one thing, though, that I'm not sure they meant to make it ironic was all of the gender norms and the stereotypes. So, like, nowadays in horror movies, there's a lot of strong female characters. They mix up the typical masculine type of character a lot. But in this movie, it was very strict gender norms to where when something was going on, the women were staying in the cabin. The, quote, like, most feminine guy or weakest guy.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
Was the nice guy.
Yeah, was supposed to stay with the women. And then the 2 men that get shit done were the ones that were trying to hide the body.
The idiot macho guys.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's definitely something very different that you don't see as often nowadays.
Yeah.
And
unless they're blatantly making fun of it.
Yeah. But, I mean, maybe it's possible that they were trying to be ironic with those, but I really don't think so, because there's a lot of movies during that time where that was really typical.
It's really hard to tell, because the cliches were strong with this one.
Oh yeah, like the teenage, we were having this conversation during the movie. It's so funny whenever they have like teen horror movies or any sort of teen movies where the quote teens are actually actors that are like in their mid-20s and they're over here like, oh, we're drinking, we're being bad, we're having sex. It's like, I remember as a teenager watching those movies and being like, teenagers don't do that. I mean, some of them do, but it's low percentage.
Yeah.
We're too stressed with school.
It's an extremely low percentage. At least in our area where we grew up, there was like next to none.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was, yeah, it's always the late or mid to late 20s, sometimes early 30s, where you're just, as a kid watching it, you're like, okay, sure. I mean, they're older than me, so, whatever.
Yeah, you don't really notice it. Yeah.
Watching it now, you're like, there ain't no way in hell they're in their teens.
Yeah.
They haven't seen their teens for like 7+ years.
Yeah, because I was like, it's like you look at them and you're like, I feel like I'm a very similar age to them.
Yeah. You're looking at it like, okay, we are the same age. I might be younger than you.
And one thing that I noticed watching this movie, and you guys can comment and let us know your opinions on this. Maybe I'm just being overly sensitive, but all of the sex and establishing that they're teenagers, that made me kind of weirded out. Like, they're at least 18, but the fact that they're like, ooh, teenagers having lots of sex, like, I don't really care for that.
I feel like they pushed it a little more in this movie than they did before. I mean, I know a lot of the quote unquote, classics or older movies did have a lot of that in there. Friday the 13th.
That's true.
Halloween, that kind of thing. Nightmare on Elm Street had some as well. But I feel like this one, they really, like, threw it in your face. As quickly and as often as they could.
Yeah, and it's like I'm old enough that looking at an 18-year-old, I feel like I'm looking at an underage person. Even though they're at legal age, I know that it'd be breaking a boundary to find someone that age attractive. At least for me personally.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like...
It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
It didn't further the plot, and it just made the viewer weirded out and uncomfortable.
I know, it's like sexualizing teenagers. It's like, obviously we know that teenagers have sex, but I don't know. Like I said,
if it does nothing for the plot, there's not really a reason to put it in there.
Yeah.
I know sex sells, but I mean, if you're going to have it in there, have a reason. You already established that at least 2 of the guys are kind of douchey. You don't need to drive the point home even further with one of them looking in their window.
Mm-hmm. Like
while
with
they're trying to get it on.
Like with Halloween or Friday the 13th, the sex scenes that they showed weren't necessarily overly sexual, but they also led up to something happening.
Yeah. It was part of the reason why they were killed.
Yeah.
So it had a purpose. And they also didn't show that much. This one went a little further, I feel like.
Yeah, and there's...
showed quite a bit.
Yeah. But anyways, that's just our opinion. Like I said, maybe we're being a little bit too sensitive. I would love to hear other people's view on that, because maybe we're not going crazy.
I mean, to be fair, it wasn't quite Game of Thrones level.
No. This is true. It seemed pretty much consensual.
We'll get to that later. But one scene in particular. We'll get to that later. But moving on. A lot of cliches that they really keep hammering on. There was the dumb blonde, the smart brunette that kind of takes charge when she can.
Mm-hmm.
But will also stay in the cabin when the macho guy says, girls need to stay here. Least macho guy, you stay with the girls.
Yeah.
The cops were incompetent. There was a stoner or skater dude.
Yeah.
With a huge bag of weed.
I love that scene, though, how they're like, oh, we want to have a private conversation. He pulls out his bag of weed, and they're like, come, friend, come, sit next to us. Bring your other bags of weed.
And I swear, that's the biggest scene that you clearly see each and every cliche ever.
Really?
Right there.
That was so funny, though. Oh, my gosh. Like, this movie, some of the over-top parts are legitimately funny, but then some of them are kind of obnoxious. But, it's give or take.
It was hard for them to find a balance.
Yeah.
There was horrible parenting all around. Their parents were not even mentioned the entire movie.
Nope.
Not sure how they talked their parents into them going on this trip for the week. They said they were going to be there for a week.
A week, yep.
But also the kid that was sitting on the porch, on the swing, that is known to bite people.
Dennis!
I'm sorry. What?
They even put up a sign later in the movie saying, "Don't sit next to Dennis, he bites."
What kind of parent are you?
It's like, why don't you just
get your kid help?
Oh my god. And yeah, his punishment for the kid is freaking suffocating him. It's like, what the hell?
Well, he hit him with a bat at one point. When he was biting the guy, he hit him.
Oh my god.
With a bat and was grabbing his hair really hard and pulling like
CPS.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. Is she not gonna say anything? She not gonna call CPS? Nothing. No. Get this kid some help. Because biting people is not only a really, really big behavioral issue, it's unsanitary. Which becomes an issue later on.
But they did say whenever he first bites one of the teens, the father's like, "Oh, he's gonna give you tetanus. We looked it up, and it is it is not possible to transmit tetanus from human to human."
World Health Organization website. Tetanus is not transmitted from person to person.
So. Movie.
Might give you rabies or some other form of disease. But if you haven't had him tested or anything, why is he still biting people? Quit leaving him unattended on the swing on the front porch of your establishment. This is in front of a store.
But
it's just horrible parenting. And even worse, water system.
Shall we move on to realism since we're kind of headed that direction? Yes. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Well, keep in mind for those who are listening, keep in mind that this is supposed to be a comedy / satire / horror film. So it is supposed to be over the top.
Not real.
But for realism, yeah, I'm going to give it, I'm debating between a 2 or 3. I think I'm giving it a 2.
I'm giving it a 2. It's hard to.
Yeah, the reactions over the top, how it happens. Yeah. Yeah, how it happens is... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it spreads really, really quickly. It's a highly infectious and very, very rapid degradation when you are infected. When they got infected, they had all of a day? Maybe? Before they were showing symptoms and things, and then maybe another full day before they were dead. So 2 to 3 days max?
Yeah.
Before death? That's a pretty swift timeline there. For it to go that quickly through your system and have your flesh already start rotting. This is beyond anything that I've heard of as far as I think it's called necrotizing fasciitis, the flesh-eating disease. It's very, very rapid. So I don't think their timeline fits. It's incredibly contagious, which I can kind of get, but they seem to be able to spread it multiple ways. They didn't really touch too much on that with the exact way it's transmitted. It was extreme the way they reacted to it.
Yeah.
Which some of them I can understand. There would be some panic, but shoot on sight?
Yeah, some of them were immediately, instead of being like, stay away. Well, yeah, one guy was like, stay away from me. And the next second, he's like, I'm going to shoot you.
Yep.
Just,
yeah.
But, and then like the whole, or the main way that the disease was transmitted was through the water line. Mm-hmm. But it literally looks like they pumped the lake/reservoir water through the pipes and into the cabin rather than some sort of treatment.
Yeah, there was no filtration system or anything shown. They showed a pipe running from the cabin down the deck into the lake.
Yeah.
There was no in between.
It's like even a very rudimentary system would have some sort of filtration to ensure that the water was safe.
Yeah. Because otherwise they would have to boil everything, even for showers or baths. They would not be able to use that water for anything.
No.
And it'd be sanitary.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But honestly, like a lot of it could have been circumvented with proper communication. They also didn't have anything in the cabin in the way of, communicating with the outside world. There was no landline. There were no cell towers in the area, which I understand the cell towers. Don't get me wrong. I definitely understand that. There's still areas, around here that you're not going to get a signal. I get it. But they still need to be able to contact emergency services, especially if they're renting the place for a vacation. So that is on the company that they rented it from, really. There was no landline. There was no way of communication. They did mention that everybody in the area uses a radio to speak with each other and to contact the authorities and all. There was no mention of a radio in that cabin at all.
Nope.
So...
And that's a huge liability to whatever company or owner of that cabin. So there's no way that they would have at least some sort of, like a radio at minimum.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. Or an extra serviceable vehicle, just in case theirs broke down or something happened, because that's very unsafe.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there thinking a lawsuit the entire time I'm watching it.
Yeah, and I feel like this movie is very much a karma type of movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's like first the one guy fucked up by, well, all of the teenagers fucked up by killing the initial diseased guy. And then once the townspeople killed all of the teenagers, then they get infected. Well, it leaves off with the showing that they're going to get infected. And then that's how the movie ends. There's no happy ending. It's just like, the town's screwed.
Yep.
The end.
You see, and how the town is getting infected is these kids are selling lemonade. They got the water to make the lemonade from the lake/river area that's infected.
Yeah.
They were downstream from one of the infected that had fallen partially in the water. And the running water was carrying it downstream to where the kids were filling the cooler. So they were selling the lemonade for 5 cents, as kids do. And of course, one of the first ones to buy a cup are the cops that killed the teens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they just end up at the end, you see basically a porch party happening with like half the town drinking out of the lemonade cups. So.
Yeah. Well.
I wonder if they're going to be in Cabin Fever too.
Well, one thing I think would be kind of fun to discuss is thinking about early 90s, or not early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, if we were in that situation, how we would handle it. Like me personally, like if the guy was wanting help, I would definitely keep my distance and ask him to keep his distance, but I would let him know that I'm getting help or calling for help.
Yeah. I mean, he seemed pretty insistent on getting help, and yes, I would want to help. Keep your distance, but come with me. Have him sit outside of the cabin, like in the fire pit kind of area. Stay here. Let me get you something, because, I mean, they have a cooler of stuff. I'm hoping they brought something other than beer, like bottled water or something.
Probably not.
Let me get you something. Set it a little bit away from him. That way there's no contact. Stay here. I'm going to go get help. Let the others know. You're with 4 other people. Mm-hmm. Let the others know. And go have one of them go with you. And the others watch him. Go get help. Bring them back. But...
Or if anything, they did have a pickup bed. The guy could always lay in the pickup bed, and they asked for directions for a hospital or something. That's way more than those stupid teens did.
He ignored his existence.
And threatened to kill him.
Yes!
And then later killed him.
Yeah. And then when he's throwing up blood all in the truck, I'm sitting here, no amount of bleach is going to get that clean.
Just burn it.
Yep, just, light a match and call insurance, because, no. And then he's over here, I cleaned it, I'm sitting here, what cleaning products did you use? Because I saw nothing in your supplies that you brought, and there wasn't anything in that cabin. So I don't know what you used, but, no. You still see, like, blood stains on the seat and partially on the windshield. Nah. I'll hike to town, thank you. I'm gonna walk.
Well, kind of, that made me think, kind of going back to the realism scale, whenever Boy Meets World guy, I forgot his name.
We're awful with names, guys. If you guys don't know this already, you'll learn it pretty quick. We're awful with names.
But anyways, he starts touching...
I have it right here. Paul.
Thank you.
Yes.
He starts touching and doing sexual things to his girlfriend while she's sleeping. And first of all, nowadays,
technically not girlfriend.
Okay.
It was his friend. He wanted to be her boyfriend. They never actually said anything. They kissed once on this like floating dock, and then they never really discussed it.
Yeah, so, if you are a consenting couple and you previously talked about being woken up to sexual favors or whatever, and you both okayed that, that's one thing. But in this particular scenario, it didn't seem to be that. And
no consent.
Yeah, so nowadays that definitely seems like it was extremely inappropriate. But as far as realism goes, she was acting like she was enjoying it until he pulls his hand out and it's covered in blood and her leg flesh is like rotting away. And then she's like, oh, I don't feel so good. It's like that. No, she would be like, fucking stop touching me. I don't feel good.
That whole scene was just so confusing to me because when she was going to sleep, like right before, she was saying, I don't feel well. Mm-hmm. And she really just seemed to want him there for comfort. So they were kind of snuggling. Okay, fine. He woke up horny. Like, whatever. He's a guy. It happens. But again, no consent. But wildly inappropriate. Even if you had consent, she was not feeling well. What possessed you to think that this is a good idea?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the time.
And even consent aside, if she says she's not feeling it, well, you don't know whether or not it's contagious.
Yes.
Yeah, just
Again,
so many things wrong.
Time.
Yeah, so many things wrong with that scene. But
And she did look perfectly fine until he went to go, like, wash his hands of the blood, and then he turns back around and she's, like, covered in a sheen of sweat.
yeah.
It looks like in physical pain and all. 180. You forgot something in the last scene, guys.
But as far as movies go, if anyone is just a classic horror movie fan, you're okay with all of the tropes, you are okay with the stereotypes, and you just want a trashy horror movie, I'd say this is worth a watch, because there are a few over the top scenes where it is funny. There are scenes that don't hit, but it's kind of hit or miss, and some of the gore, or I should say, the gore in the movie isn't necessarily, it's not like Evil Dead where it's like gore just for the sake of gore. It's like, it's a disease and it just so happens to be a flesh-eating disease, so I can justify it being gory.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. It is a good movie. I do kind of consider it somewhat of a classic, honestly. I know it wasn't in the same era as Friday the 13th,
yeah,
or Nightmare on Elm Street, or Halloween, or all the greats, but I still think that this is one of the few Contagion type movies that really stuck out in people's minds.
Yeah,
I mean, of course there was Outbreak, but next to that, this is kind of the movie that I think of, at least, whenever I think a disease movie.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I look forward to us watching the remake.
Yeah.
That came out in 2016. Because first of all, I want to see if, it's a lot more appropriate for current audiences. And then also if they try and make it more of a comedy, or they change it back to being more of a horror. Mm-hmm. Or if they try
to take it more seriously.
Yeah. I'll be interested. 'Cause I don't think I've seen the remake, to be honest.
I think I've only seen bits and pieces. Like, I always came in when they had already started or something, or had to leave in the middle of it. So I've only seen just snippets here and there.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see it the full way through.
Yeah, but this movie is definitely dated with the types of language it uses. Definitely wouldn't be appropriate for nowadays.
It feels older than it is.
Yeah, and then of course the style, and I don't know. It's like, I feel like there's movies that come out in the 70s and 80s, and there's just something about them that makes them timeless. But this movie definitely did age.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm hoping the remake updates it a little bit. I'm hoping they don't overdo some things.
Yeah.
As remakes often do.
Yeah, like make it even more gory, or... Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
At a later time, we will see. But we do appreciate the recommendation. Thank you, Brady, again. And until the next time, guys, we hope you stay safe and stay spoopy.
Bye.